eat. And it was definitely okay. Oh, well.
Thank you, Brian. Observing all protocol, we come to session 3 of this program. Session 3, as you can see on your program, it will cover access to technology and land. And to go through this section, we have an eminent list of speakers all gathered here to speak on the experiences they have had in their own fields. And I have a pleasure to now introduce those speakers. We have Winfred Nyano. She is a Ugandan national who has worked for FAO Uganda since 2007, bringing in a livelihood dimension to FAO Uganda programs. Winfred is a rural development specialist and supports the development of program portfolios through formulation and implementation of projects, specifically designing appropriate livelihood interventions for farmer field schools. So she will talk on the farmer field schools, her experiences on that. She has participated in formulating of regional projects with the World Bank in support of smallholder farms in East African countries, including Kenya, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda. In the field, she oversees and coordinates the farmer field schools approach to a robust model of empowering vulnerable communities to enhance the achievement of economic potentials through entrepreneurial skills, savings and mobilizations, and cohesive producer groups while integrating and reinforcing long-term development. We then have Mary Azanzo. She is Guyaian, is a food specialist, food scientist by training and current director of private sector development at the African Cashew Initiative. Mary leads ACI's objective of increasing the competitiveness of cashew processing in Africa. She has over 15 years of experience in value chain development. She has extensive experience with international marketing, food quality, food safety, supply chain, development sustainability. She enjoys linking up value chain actors to market, ensuring sustainable business relationships. Then we have amongst us somebody that we do not need any introduction, Mr. Vivano Nasongo, Acting Secretary General of the ACP. He is by training, he is a commodity expert. He has been involved with the European, African, Caribbean, Pacific Liaison Committee, an economist with 17 years of experience in agriculture and natural resource policies, formulation, aid programming, sectoral commodities, export strategies, and trade. And then lastly, not the least, we have Jan Says, Senior Program Coordinator of Technical Center for Agriculture and Rural Cooperation, currently engaged in program development, learning capacity, and alliance building for sustainable and profitable value chain in the ACP countries. So let's welcome our panelists, and I then pass on to Brian to undertake the program. I leave the conduct of the session and the time management on the broad shoulders of Brian. So over to you, and then after that we'll have some time, I hope, to sum up and take lessons from the proceedings of the session. Thank you.
Very good, Ambassador. Thank you. Thank you. It's Chris, by the way, but that's all right. It's okay. I like the name Brian. It's great. Mary, let's start with you. You have I think quite successfully to see visually what you're doing. Mary, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I work with the German Development Corporation in the African Cashew Initiative project. And this is a project that is currently in 5 countries: Benin, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Mozambique. And we have plans of upscaling into other African as well as Caribbean countries. Our objective is to increase the competitiveness of African production, processing, link up various actors in the chain, and also advocate for right policies in the cashew sector. We are a strategic alliance. And now let me just talk briefly, since you are watching the video, I will explain very soon. It's about one example of South-South cooperation, and it's about how we link up, even though currently we are in 5 countries, we link up several countries in West Africa through the master training program. So that is what is currently being shown on the video. And it involves bringing people from different sectors. This particular one is a success story about a lady called Adiata Traore, who is the production manager in a cashew processing factory in Burkina Faso, just for you to know what is happening in the video. Now, coming back to what we do as a project, we work with, the project is a strategic alliance between different partners, private sector, public sector, and we link up various people in the chain. We like to work with government because for whatever you do, you need ownership. Therefore, government of the various countries are key partners. Now, if we talk about triangular cooperation, we also have work. Now you can already see many logos over here, which show some of the partners. So we also look at working with the North. So from the very inception time of our project, we linked up with the international markets. We have international projects such as international organizations, such as Kraft Food, such as Walmart, such as Intersnack, which is the biggest European snack company, as part of the board member of the African Cashew Initiative project. Now, when you look at technology, as this session, this panel is about talking about technology, I'll provide a few examples what the African Cashew Initiative had been doing. We looked at what is the best situation for cashew in Africa. And we do this, as I explained already, through several partnerships. In terms of technology, I would like to provide one example where we looked at, cashew. Currently, we have about 1.2 million tons of cashews produced in Africa. And we have the rest, 50% from Brazil, from India, and from Vietnam, Indonesia, and other smaller countries. So altogether, what we have noticed is that the expertise for processing in Africa, specifically West Africa, is a very young industry. So there was the need for technology exchange from Brazil, from Vietnam, from Sri Lanka, and other countries. So we did in 2011 a technology equipment study where we visited all the cashew producing countries in the world to learn about what they are doing, document it, and provide this information to investors in Africa, so that anyone who wants to go into investment will have the right information and be able to choose the right technology for their work. Now, the benefit is that there's more transparency, there is more efficiency, and therefore we plan with this efficiency, there should also be more sustainability for the processing sector in Africa. Now, we also, at the production level, I'll also provide just 2 quick examples. Grafting technology is used in other commodities like mangoes. However, in West Africa, again, this is a new technology. And Tanzania had over 30 years of experience in cashew research. Therefore, as part of our program, we learned again from Tanzania, and we had exchange program, study tours, so that researchers in Africa can also, and also specifically West Africa, can learn from Tanzania. And this knowledge, we then, together with national and international partners, I have mentioned many of them, we can then use this information, transfer it to the farmers. So we introduced the grafting technology, and I can just give examples that currently we have at least 1.5 million seedlings produced in our 5 countries per year. And one example would be Mozambique. because Mozambique presents a very good case where in cashew is very specifically spearheading the seedling production process. In Ghana, another example, we have the Cocoa Research Institute that leads the research. And in each country, I'll say Burkina Faso, we have INERA, in Benin, we have INRAP, in Cote d'Ivoire, we have FIRCA. So in each country, we have partners that are learning from each other. Linked with this, we also have the exchange program within West Africa, where beyond our 5 countries, we also invite researchers from Togo, Senegal, Gambia to be part of the learning exchange, a platform which we have. Another third example in terms of technology, which will be my last example, will be about the cashew, what we call the kernel out-turn ratio kit. It's a kit that you can use to crack the nut to know what is inside. So it's a way of measuring the quality. 10 years ago, farmers did not know the quality of what they were producing. They did not know that you could open a cashew and it's empty. It's empty because it didn't have enough water. And we have buyers who have this knowledge. Now, what we did in our project from the very beginning was to introduce this technology to farmers. It is called the KOR kit, so that farmers and farmers associations, processing units can measure the quality of their product. The benefit is that it empowers them so that they can have better negotiation power. It is introduced to both men and women. And women farmers, youth, men, they have the same technology. And they have idea now what it means if you are producing cashew and what quality you can negotiate for what price. I would say that it's still in development. We haven't finished all the job, and we're looking forward to upscaling so that these technologies that we are presenting will be available to all farmers. These are a few examples I'll present at this stage.
Mary, you have all, thank you very much, you have all this list of different private sector companies. How did you persuade them to join on, and what actual role do they play?
Yes, they have different roles. From the inception, at the time of the first phase, when the proposal for the project was being written, each of them was contacted to find out their interest in cashew, whether they wanted to be on board concerning the production, processing, marketing of the cashew. And based on the ideas that were shared, and let me say it was mutual learning, because the private sector have their expertise, they have their needs, they have their interests. And the public sector and the project, we also have interest. So we learn from each other. And I think one innovative thing about the African Cashew Initiative is the ability to adjust. Today there was a question about the market not being static, being dynamic, and how that is managed. Being able to adapt to market situations so that private sector will benefit from what they contribute. And let me say they contribute a lot in cash, in kind, in knowledge, in technology. And they are part of the steering committee, they are part of the board, and they visit the farmers, they visit processing units, and there is knowledge exchange periodically between these partners.
So what's in it for them? What are they getting out of it? A constant pipeline of cashews, or what?
As I said, they have different roles because they are different companies. We saw, for example, we had Ultramare, which is equipment supplier. So being closer to the cashew industry will help him to understand more the needs of the manufacturers, and therefore use this knowledge to improve upon his own manufacturing system. We have like Intersnack or Kraft Food that are buyers. So in return, they would like to have more cashews from Africa for their supermarkets and for their business. We have also ACP, which is a German research institution. For them, their interest was in traceability of the supply chain. So therefore, they have developed a system together with the African Cashew Initiative and of course the other partners to be able to then trace their produce or trace the produce of the buyers from the farmer level to the final market. So each of them has something to offer and each of them has something to gain.
And can this be applied to other kinds of crops?
Certainly. Certainly this can be used in other kind of crops, and I would say that currently we, together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, there's a discussion on granules because these same partners are interested in granules. They are snack, they produce they market snack, and peanuts are examples. So the question is, if we do cashew, why not peanuts? Because in cashew already we advise and promote intercropping, which will be part of the answers to how we improve land quality. So if there is land quality improvement and there's intercropping which we promote, therefore intercropping with groundnuts will provide another source of produce for the international market, for example.
How many think this would work? Not too many buyers here, man. Can you?
It's working in those countries. Philomena, for example, from Incaju, can share some experiences. And we also have others who know the project who can ask. Now let me also say that beyond also the private sector, there's also the public sector. And we like to advocate for regional integration, for example, because of the benefits. Some countries produce more than others. And we're already planning, hopefully in Senegal or in Cote d'Ivoire, a meeting of government, a meeting of head ministries together to deliberate on how to move forward for regional cooperation. And this, I'm sure that we will also invite some ambassadors, so long as soon as we have more details about how we're going to move forward.
Okay, and it so happens that Philomena is on my list from people on the floor to call on. Philomena,
Muito obrigada.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I think it's all been said as regards the African Cashew Initiative. But the question is how we can develop cashew cultivation in our various countries. It is not well known compared to, for example, cotton, sugar, cocoa, coffee. All these crops are well known, but cashew cultivation is not. But there are comparative advantages, and that is what we want in order to solve our country's problems. This is important because we are talking about a large tree, which produces fruit which is widely appreciated internationally. Over the next 10 years or each year, there will be a 10% increase in demand for cashew and cashew-derived products. Now, most of our countries export cashew to Europe, to the United States, America, and Asia. So, we know that cashew is not well known, but we have been working with ambassadors here in Brussels. We, in fact, we have been working with them to disseminate information on cashew cultivation, talking about the advantages of such a crop and trying to sensitize public opinion. And we obviously require support. But up to now, there's been no sustained organized support as regards developing cashew production. So I know we have ambassadors here and other representatives of other organizations. Cashew is a product, is a valuable product which gives valuable yield and income to our communities. It's a product which creates income, whether you're talking about exporting cashew in its raw form or as cashew nuts.
On my previous question is, can you really make this apply to other crops that are not sort of like a specialty crop? This is a high-value specialty crop, cashew nuts. It's not the same as cotton. Can you get the private sector so involved in such a way as we've seen, this big list of private sector who would love to to their shelves. But if it can, in other words, how much? Filomena.
Então, no nosso
Well, in the present program, we are working on this crop as in other crops such as beans, soya, almonds, etc. It is possible to merge all this. Cashew is a big tree. You can engage in percentages here, 10% cashew, 10% other crops. Cashew is a tree, but you can cultivate other crops around it. So you have this interest on the part of communities. Because what you are talking about here is hard currency earners. Our countries need dollars, need euros. So what is the advantage of the private sector? The private sector generates income. It buys the cashew nuts. It's usually in raw form, and it is processed in other countries. In Mozambique's case, we have a sound and lengthy experience. We have an American factory, an American company, which processes the raw nut into the final product. So we add value to the country, and we add income and jobs. We have another factory which works with us. It's in Norway. It buys the raw nuts. It processes the nuts in Norway, and it sells the same product. So many times, the cashew comes from Mozambique, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, etc., but there's no indication as to where it comes from. So we have this experience, and it's in fact a complement to other wide-ranging products and wide-ranging crops in order to solve the problems of our country relating to women and young people, for example. Thank you.
Obrigado, Filomena. Are there any other questions before study? Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, mine is not a question as such, but to respond to your question that apart from cashew,
Yes.
which other crop could also follow suit
Yes.
with regards to the value chain or how the arrangement of cashew production is done. I think soybean is a crop that meets, if you look at Africa as a whole, it has the requirements to let soybean grow to a higher level. But then it has been stampeded as a result of the labor and also the agronomic practices that are related. So a similar approach that is being adopted by African Cashew Initiative. But let me recommend and commend the USAID. I think in Africa, at least, I know of Ghana, Burkina Faso, and I think Côte d'Ivoire. They're doing a lot to promote that. And I think with the South-South cooperation and what we are doing at the moment, if the soybean is also an area that we could all look at because it has the potential to help, or it has the potential to bring the youth and women in particular to be involved in this sector. And it is a cash crop. So if we can all turn our attention to that, then the issue of leaving no one behind by 2030 is more likely to be seen in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's move on to Winfried, if we may. Winfried, Program Coordinator for the FAO in Uganda. And what evidence have you seen of technology playing a role and having been transferred to Uganda and benefiting women and youth?
Thank you, Chris. First, I would like to say, to deviate from technology transfer in the programs that we are implementing with regard to farmer field schools, because in the field school, we prefer to have communities to understand, to go through a process of taking a decision on what they should take based on an informed process. And that's how the field school approach comes in. It empowers communities or farmers to go through a learning process, to identify the challenges they're facing in production, and then they come up with solutions, which they test through experiment or validation studies before they uptake. So with regard to technologies, through this field school process, we've had women. I will just contextualize it. In Uganda, we have different regions that are differently served by the central government. In some of the regions, we have communities that don't have access to infrastructure, to very limited services like extension, and they have very limited information, knowledge. The skills are very low, and we have applied the field school to these regions to try to engage the communities to take what is new and use it for their benefit. So in one of the regions where we have applied the field school, the women they fend for their families, literally. They have to produce food, they have to find the resources to pay for the school fees, and they are faced with the issues of gender-based violence because of power imbalances due to poverty. And so through the field school, we have engaged women to learn, to take up skills, to experiment on different technologies for them to improve their agricultural production. So through the learning process, we work together with the research institutions. We find research in Uganda has a lot of technologies that are on the shelves. They're not disseminated because of the top-down kind of approach. And through the field schools, we have taken these up to the farmers, and they have tested them in their fields to see what works for them. And through the process, they have taken on improved varieties of technologies. I think I have some slides on some of what is going on. They are demanding for the technologies, multiplying different varieties of crops, root tubers, cereals, legumes. We have also supported the farmers to work to identify what local varieties, for example, that they hold of value. Mm-hmm. So through research, they don't adapt this process, they co-produce with research certain technologies, because they tell research, this is what we want, this is what works for us, and together they go to the communities, they identify these varieties, the positive attributes, they provide the information to research, and then together they work with research to validate this, to eventually multiply them and send them back to the communities. Through the field school, we don't take technology in isolation. It's a holistic process, because the farmers, much as you take the technologies down, they need the means to access these technologies. So the field school process also provides additional skills in terms of savings mobilization, entrepreneurial skills, and to provide them opportunity to engage in income generation, so that as they learn the skills, they understand what technologies, take decisions on what technologies they would like to uptake, they're able to pay for them, to access them.
Can you be more specific about which technologies? I'm looking at some of your notes about the Karamojo region.
Yes.
Which is very remote. It has flash floods, it has dry spells, yes, which can lead to different diseases in plants and animals. These are different things to deal with. What sort of technology do they need for this?
In Karamojo, they need everything. In terms of production, this is an area where people don't know how a tomato seed looks like and how to grow a tomato. And you can see that is the magnitude. So from seeds for crop production, from the improved breeds for animals, they have taken on artificial insemination for improving the the livestock breeds. The seeds, we are talking about maize, beans, the most staple crops in the region.
Right.
Cassava, we are looking at groundnuts. Please, can you give us I don't know whether Catherine will have the slides. And then we are looking at technologies for water conservation. That's
Right.
being a very dry area. That's
Can we get the slides up? Is that possible? Is that possible?
It's okay.
And this expertise comes from where?
The expertise, the Farmer Field School originates from Southeast Asia, specifically in Indonesia.
Huh.
Yes, and
So this
is
is
the
South-South.
South-to-South cooperation.
Right,
Through
right.
the South-to-South cooperation, FAO facilitates the development of the field schools in Africa and other parts of the world. Currently, we have field schools running globally in, I think, 90 countries. And
I see in East Africa you're in Kenya, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda
yes, Tanzania. We
as
have
well.
now down south, Rwanda, Burundi, taking on the same.
So you're all
More triangular, but also still south to south. What is happening with the field schools is that in Asia it was implemented under a monocropping system, focusing on pest management. In Uganda, we have innovated and taken it to a different level. We are using the field school as a community development tool. We are using the field schools for disaster risk reduction, for climate change adaptation, for sorting issues of gender-based violence, HIV/AIDS in the communities. We address through agriculture the root causes of these challenges. So we have taken it to the next level, which most of the countries haven't understood how to do it. And that is one of the things we can take back to most of these countries.
Are most of your students women?
Most of our students, yes, are women.
And so it is
They're
empowering them.
70% of the participants in the field schools are women.
Wow.
To date, we have over 4,000 field schools in Uganda.
Wow.
That is over 120,000 direct households.
How is this financed? This is in cooperation with Indonesia, or who else is giving them? The Ugandan government? I guess the government
We
is providing.
have different governments that have financed field schools: Spain, Belgium, Italy, the European Union. We have various donors that have financed fields. The UK, yes.
Any feedback on this from anyone? Question? How many wish you had this in your country and don't? I guess not. Okay.
There's a
All
hand
right.
behind there.
I guess you're successful enough as it is, but maybe there's more to do. I'm sure there is.
Oh, there's a hand behind there.
Is there a hand?
It was in the corner that way.
I don't see the hand, but yes, sir. Please, maybe come forward to. C'est possible. Voilà le micro au coin là, oui, pourquoi pas. Please identify yourself.
I'm Kobna Beecham from the Youth Employment Agency in Ghana.
Yes.
I hope I heard the question right. I thought I heard how many don't have it in their countries and wish they did.
Yes.
Was that the question?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why my hand was up.
You raised your hand. Very good. Why don't you have it in your country? Why not?
That's a tough one to answer. we didn't know about this initiative. That's why we don't have it.
Are there maybe certain resistances that would prevent it?
Maybe it's
or-
because we don't come often to the South-South seminar. And now that we are here and now that we are aware, I'm sure next year we'll have something to report.
You got to come more often. You got to talk to Winfrey then.
We will.
Yeah. Yes, please, s'il vous plaît. You can take the same microphone, I guess, in the corner there, please.
N.
I'm sorry, repeat. You're from?
AEFJN.
Which is?
The African European Faith and Justice Network,
Okay.
based in Brussels. And essentially, I just want to know, you said a lot of EU governments were involved. What exactly do they get out of it? And especially when it comes to cassava, are there GMOs involved? And especially the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because I know that there's a lot of controversy about them currently in Africa. And I know I forgot the name, lady who spoke said that they're involved, and I want to know exactly what they're taking from it. because I'm sure they have other agendas.
Winfried, is it possible to give us information on that?
I got the one on the GMOs. I've not got the other part of the question.
The GMO, and also what's in it for these European countries that give the money? Well, how do they benefit from this?
How the European countries benefit?
Benefit from it, yes.
That one's a hard one for me to respond to. I think the resources from the European countries are given under the bilateral agreements with countries. On the cassava, on the GMOs, we do not promote GMOs. There are the technologies that are being promoted are homegrown in our countries, in Uganda and within Africa, within the African region. So they are very organic products that are being produced.
Okay. Any other questions? Shall we move on? Let's move on to Mr. Vivanu Nyasu. Please. Sorry, Nyasunu. Nyasunu. Yes. Assistant Secretary General here at the ACP. Maybe you could take more of that angle of South-South and triangular, unless you had some other ideas, but I think from what you've heard from these two stories, how could this be upscaled through South-South and triangular cooperation?
Merci beaucoup. Peut-être je vais commencer par...
Thank you very much. Perhaps I should start by answering a question I was not asked, but I feel like answering it. The last question as to how this could benefit European partners. We made the choice in the ACP to talk of the case of coal ACP because we find it to be of interest as it in the intervention, in the actions we take in favor of development in our countries, we assist our European partners to meet their international obligations so that given the way standards and regulations have evolved in the EU, if nothing were done, exports from ACP countries would no longer have access to the European market, so that small producers at the very bottom of the chain in ACP countries would be outside the market because of the requirements on the European side. So when new standards are reached, we are active in trying to ensure that exports, the flow of exports can continue. And in doing so, we have set up a mechanism for financing, but we did not want to do this in the usual way by farming this out to consultants. Rather, we worked with an association of entities from the private sector, that is exporters from ACP countries and importers into the European market. So these are people who know what the stakes are. And we did this because we are of the view that these are the best placed persons to discuss these issues. And this is being done in a triangular fashion, South-South as well. Here we are talking of technology in this session. So what we're doing is making available technologies linked to good agricultural practices, and these can be implemented through experiments in fields, developing protocols to further improve productivity in a sustainable way. And looking at the results, at the outcomes, it is worth noting that here we are seeing a contribution from the south to the north and vice versa. Initially, we would have technological input from the north, 80% hailed from the north. Initially, 2013, we see the exact opposite. 90% of the trainers actually come from ACP countries, and just 10% are European trainers. And we think this is interesting because since the morning we have been saying that this should not just serve as yet another talk shop. We want to see this transition to reality. So to have ACP countries become much more active on this, and we have been thinking and acting on this so as to make it possible for each party to meet the commitments, and for our part to ensure that our producers can still viably produce and still have a market, and to ensure that European counterparts can meet their commitments internationally. So this is already working. You already have this cooperation. What next? How do you further develop this? Well, when you look at the next slide, you see the impact already. I'm not responsible for this.
Okay. Merci.
Merci.
Thank you. Now, with these actions, we've been able to create a turnover of 150 million euros. And in terms of employment, about 25,000 jobs have been created. And most of those, 58%, are employment for women. And this is further developing. Just to answer your question, so we began, and this is simply for the period 2009 to 2014. And you have about 80% of permanent employees, so moving from the informal to the formal, and also much more involvement of women in the jobs created. This was one of the very first programs we financed out of the 11th EDF, and additional funding was identified to continue this support, but we want to move on from the original fruit and vegetable sector. We want to extend this to other sectors. So we're looking at cocoa, and we have already began working on that. So we're moving away from strictly fruits and vegetables. And for those countries that are heavily dependent on these exports, we want to now move towards countries that are not necessarily dependent on those products, but which can also make a difference by increasing production. And in so doing, we want to stand out and break away from simply exports to the European Union. We're looking now at the intra-ACP level of trade within regions of the ACP. We could perhaps further increase the value of goods within the ACP space, and we do hope for support, further support for that, more potential. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any other questions on this point? Any criticism, support, words of support? No. We continue.
Juan Chaz, Agriculture Policy Program, Senior Program Coordinator at the Technical Center for Agricultural and Rural Cooperation, the CTA. I guess the question of technology transfer is probably quite germane for you, and perhaps you can offer more enlightenment on how that can be developed. How is it working now? How is it changing people's lives, the lives of women and youth? That's what we're talking about today. How is that working today?
Okay, let me just start by saying that the way we try to address that is through knowledge and sharing. I have heard a lot so far since this morning, the importance of knowledge sharing, and I have heard some cases of people not doing or not wanting things because they don't know about it. So the job of the CTA, and in particular this intra-ACP policy program, between the Caribbean and the Pacific regions, but also to some extent in Africa, is actually to help strengthen the capacities of regional organizations. We are small organizations, we work through regional institutions, and also the interregional capacities between the regions to better serve the needs of smallholder agriculture and rural development. So our job is fundamentally to document what works well, where, how, and why, and to try to communicate it, to let it be known to a large audience between these two regions, but also globally.
Can you give us a couple examples of what works?
Yes. Since the forum and this particular session, has to do also with access to land, although land is not a direct domain of the intra-ACP, we collaborate with last year with the FAO and with the International Fund for Agricultural Development to produce a volume on youth in agriculture. And in that volume, there are over 20 plus cases of how youth, through different types of services and support, be them value chains, finance, specific training, but particularly there are around 7 cases that are considered successful, not only in Caribbean or ACP countries, but also in other southern countries like Mexico, like the Philippines, like China. So one of the things we do is precisely to document those cases. And those cases include schemes for access to land that include land distribution, land leasing, in the case of Mexico, the creation of a fund to support and the access to land in institutional structures that are not very conducive to land ownership by youth. In this case, particularly in Mexico, land is owned by the community.
Yes, communal land. That's an issue in many places. That's right.
So how to create a mechanism that challenges, culture with participation of different actors, government, development agencies, to change that and to convert it into an opportunity, for young people being able to do a business.
How do you do that? What's an example?
Well, that example, the case of Mexico, it's a project. We don't do it ourselves, but we document how it's done. So I will refer the audience, to those different cases in this youth and agriculture volume, which is very interesting. This is something that we've done. Another specific way that we do the actual knowledge sharing, and this goes beyond the knowledge sharing. It goes to more capacity building, and it's especially targeted at youth, because we at CTA have a youth strategy, is through the use of ICTs. We think that ICTs is a very powerful set of tools that can attract, can help in making, like someone was saying, agriculture a more attractive, something that the youth would be interested more.
ICT means information
and communications technology. So specifically, just to give you one example of how we do it, we made a competitive process, a call for proposals for social reporters with a background in agricultural economics, in social sciences, or any other related field relevant to agriculture, to cover through the use of social media a large agricultural event in the Caribbean from all over the world. So this is a competitive process. You are selected based on certain criteria, and what you gain from that is that you get trained in state-of-the-art techniques about different social media, ranging from it's very strange to me, I'm too old to how to make blogs, videos, photos, presentation sharing, Twitter, Facebook, aggregation, curation, scooper, and the myriad of technologies that exist that probably many of us don't have heard about it. So they get trained on that, but they not only get trained, it is an action training. After they get trained in these technologies, they are supposed to cover the event. So what we did was that they were in charge with this training to cover an event for 2 weeks. 12 events.
What sort of event?
It was the first Caribbean Pacific Agri-Food Forum held in Barbados, November last year. So that I think that if you ask me what is the take for the youth, we are not giving them an income, we are not giving them land. What the intra-ACP is allowing is to create the capabilities, and one of those capabilities is first access to technology, specifically in this case specific and very common and useful ICT technologies, but one very important capability, which is related to these youth, which are coming from Pacific, Caribbean, from different islands that share common problems, to expand their vision, to broaden their skills about things that maybe they think is solely related to their small island.
So this is information, how to disseminate information more widely and
exposure.
And exposure.
And exposure and hands-on exposure on very specific things.
So this is not agricultural technique, this is communications
technique. It is
technique.
on agriculture.
On agriculture it is.
On agricultural issues. This team of 15 bloggers on site, plus 62 online bloggers were supposed to cover issues ranging from climate change and climate smart agriculture, nutrition, agriculture, linkages, specific value chains, in particular cases of the roots and crops value chain, which is a common priority commodity for the Caribbean and the Pacific. And they even had to go into a learning journey in the field to see what, for example, in the case of the roots and tuber value chain, we are creating a nascent Caribbean value chain alliance to see what are they doing with germoplasm that is being trialed from better management of tissue culture in the Caribbean, which was brought from the Pacific. So it was surprising for them to see that this is something we facilitate, the exchange of techniques and of information.
How do you gauge the impact on people's lives? It sounds great, but how has it impacted people's lives so far? Have you been able to
in the case of youth, it's basically getting out of to the world out there. We are not in a position for a knowledge exchange brokers to create opportunities, but creating actual capacities to. In fact, we have perhaps a lesson is that this need to be better follow up and documented of youth that after that training have been able to actually engage into provision even of services for coverage, of events, for documentation, etc.
So in other words, could you increase the effectiveness of what they're doing? In other words,
I think so. I think like the colleague Filomena said, the case of the cashew nut is not known, but of course the cashew nut is well developed, in Brazil. It is well developed in Central America. It's a high value crop, and the good practices, both of actual production and commercialization, and very specific schemes that are developed in fair trade niche markets are there. So yes, one area of collaboration, triangular, and South-South collaboration is precisely to see how we can leverage what's happening on the ground and let it be known and try to find support for it.
Any comments, questions? Ambassador, we discussed how you had a couple points you'd like to make that maybe we could also discuss among us now. Please.
Thank you very much. First of all, my apologies. I don't know where I got the brine from.
That's quite all right.
Yeah, but coming back to the point that we discussed earlier, I don't want to sum at this stage, but just want to make a comment. I think you all have heard quite extensive experiences from the various sectors on technology. But very little has been said or mentioned apart from the last speaker on land. Because I don't know about the African region, but certainly for the small island states, most of the land is community owned. And you don't have a proprietary right over those lands, so you can't use land for securing or raising finance. So this has become a big issue, at least for for Fiji and the Pacific Island states. So it will be interesting to see how that is a factor at all, or does it impinge upon the ability to raise finance, because land is an important element of the resource that goes into any agriculture sector. In Fiji, we have been having smallholder farms from the beginning, from last centuries. But because it's community owned, we're taking a stance to move away from that to large-scale farming and under cooperatives. So it will be very interesting to see the experiences in other regions as to whether land is a constraint, as the topic really probes us to sort of discuss, and how we have been, what models or how we have been able to sort of address the land issue, particularly in terms of ownership and also being able to use as a bankable resource and accessing the land itself. So that was the issue that I thought I'd put on the table, and we invite any comments if there are any experiences from other intra-regions.
Are there any comments on that? I know that in Section 4 we're going to be talking about business and finance, which will perhaps touch on that, but would anyone like to comment on that right now, and issues that you face in your country regarding that, and how that can be overcome? Okay. What about the panelists? Maybe Mary, Winifred, any experience as far as dealing with that issue?
Yeah, I think in Uganda we've got both communally owned land, and then we have areas where land is on private, what we call private milo land. Individuals have titles to that land. Currently, I think there's been a kind of action that is going on nationwide to try to have this communally owned land surveyed and titles be given by government to the owners, so that people can start, concretely owning the pieces of land.
Would it be like a long-term lease, kind of, or what, 100-year lease or something like that, or?
Yes, we do. Well, the communally owned land is owned by clans. Yes. Big clans own huge chunks of land, and so they work on it, they cultivate it. As long as you're part of that family, there's no problem, and you just use and die and go and live for the next generation. So now they're trying to see how to title it, and to have families have demarcate it and have families own portions of land, because it affects access, in that if you have it also creates a lot of conflict where we have development workers coming in to probably want to set up say a huge farm or a factory. You have very, very huge conflicts over a very huge area, people coming up and saying, no, you want to steal the land. It's very difficult to develop that area. So government is trying to work on that.
There's a land reform issue there too, perhaps, yeah?
Yes, and it may not be immediate.
Very sensitive.
It's very sensitive in our country. It's very, very sensitive. So, but there's a process already going on.
Mary, have you had? Oh, sorry. Let's go to.
Oui, non, j'allais pas intervenir moi-même puisque nous préférons donner.
Well, obviously, we prefer to give the floor to the stakeholders, but we are lucky to have the president of ROPA who represents the producers. I don't know whether you have some experience in terms of access to land and how you have managed that in your activities, which you would like to share with the people here.
Venez autour de la table et prenez un micro si.
Just take a microphone somewhere.
Oui, merci pour m'avoir donné la parole.
Thank you for giving me the floor. The issue of land is a complex one, at least in West Africa, of which I'm a national. I'm from Senegal. Because land is not for individual ownership. It's a property of the clan or the family, and it is used by people in the villages. So it's an important matter. You have the head of the family. You have the husband, the wife, and several children. So you have a manager who allots land to the family to work on. So all the ECOWAS governments are now thinking about having land use legislation. Now, as the farmers understand it, it's not a question really of registering land. Registering land may create more problems than it solves, because agricultural activity in most cases is not or does not generate enough income to cover loans which are used to help cultivate the land. So there's a prior consideration here. You need an agricultural policy which engenders income and which creates productivity in the value chain. It makes it possible for the farmer to earn enough money in order to invest it back in the land. In that way, you move on to market considerations. But you have to have control over productivity before you talk about land use and land allotment, because otherwise it's a recipe for civil war. We've seen it in some places. Now, as regards access to land, yes, there's a problem. We're all aware of this. It's a real problem in many cases, particularly as regards access of women to land. In some countries in West Africa, there is land which belongs to women. For example, land on which rice is cultivated. There's also land which passes from mother to daughter, and there's also land belonging to the family which is cultivated by women. There are several cases. It's not the same everywhere. But what is the most important thing is to look upstream first. What you can do so that when the person works the land, that person gets a decent income. You have people working 5 or 7 hectares, but they don't get enough income to earn a decent living. You also have low fertility in the soil, which is a tragedy today, which is something which you have to consider. You also have climate change, which speeds up the reduction in fertility, in soil fertility. You also have the question of water supplies. So in order for everyone to have access to land, you have to determine what kind of land you're talking about. You need decent agricultural policies. You need loan policies. There are many women working in processing industries, but they are asked for 100% guarantee just to have a small machine or something like that. And it's difficult issues. There is a division of labor where men and women can work
qui transforme le lait
in terms of cattle breeding.
Mais aujourd'hui, la crise agroécologique.
Women milk the cows, look after the cows, and men help graze them. But now there's been a reduction in grazing lands, so there's a reduction in milk production. So it goes beyond the mere family.
D'équité entre les hommes et les femmes, il faut les.
If you want to put men and women on an equal footing, you have to look at the family. The family is a multidimensional enterprise which manages the relationship between men and women, between adults and young people. Many men are surprised when they are told they have to give land to women, but then they answer, but I don't have land. The husband doesn't have land. How can you ask me to give land to my wife when I myself don't have land? So this is the problem. You have to start with the family, the community.
Une sorte de coopérative.
Well, a community, a type of cooperative owning land. You have women's associations to whom land is allotted. Togo, for example, is an exception. land in Togo doesn't belong to the state. So, in conclusion, let me say this. The questions are there. They won't be solved by just having multifaceted projects. Development means the ability within a country for people to come together, reflect on things together, you clarify, you make clear roles and responsibility, and you have governance managed by the citizens and the nationals so that everything that has to be done within compliance of the rules. So when you have that dynamic, and what I heard today does give rise to problems. ONF has its projects, the FAO has its projects, the EU has its projects. And then you go to a village, you have 5 different projects from 5 different donors. And you can imagine the problems that may arise. We all agree, as the lady said, on the problems, but the solutions are also there. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you for your comments.
Ça expose, voilà.
This is the problem as it exists, and obviously solutions need to be sought. Organizations and countries obviously need to come together. That's the way to move forward, and that is what we are reflecting on in terms of triangular cooperation and South-South cooperation. Final comment?
Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay, yes. One second.
Thank you
Monsieur?
for giving me the floor. I would like to share.
Could you speak a little louder into the microphone, please?
Yes, I would like to share some ideas about access to land.
Yes.
I come from Zimbabwe, and as you probably will be aware, it's one of the things that the government of Zimbabwe has prioritized. First of all, land belongs to the state, but the government has made a deliberate effort by implementing a very elaborate land reform program, which has sought to distribute land to various categories of farmers, from communal farmers to small-scale holders, farmers, and then large-scale commercial farmers. The idea behind it was to recognize the importance of land as an important resource, as a tool for social justice, for empowerment, for fighting poverty, for faster economic development. And in the case of Zimbabwe, the government recognized the importance of the agricultural sector. And the basic motto or slogan that is behind this land reform is that land is the economy, and the economy is land. And so from that you can interpret and try to understand how important land was being distributed and given to everybody who has an interest in working on the land. And particularly the second phase, which is the fast land reform, fast track land reform program, it targeted 5 million hectares of land for resettlement. And this was then, of course, coupled with basic infrastructure like roads, boreholes, and support services to support the various categories of farmers, including provision of tillage and agricultural inputs. So this is how the issue has been handled in Zimbabwe. And there is also an arrangement for 99-year leases, especially for long-term, for large-scale farmers to be able to be on the land for a long period to allow their investments to play out and to produce as is required. So I thought perhaps I would also throw in the model of how Zimbabwe has been able to distribute land, make it access as a resource to initiate investment projects and support the agro industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ambassador, any further comments at this point? I think you've touched on a very interesting issue here that has raised a lot of comments.
Thank you. I think it was very, very healthy discussion. Whilst the topic was not much discussed up in the front desk here, but opening up the discussion, it allowed to share the views from the various regions on a very important topic, and it certainly would play a huge role, factor into the future of agriculture, success of agriculture in most of the developing countries. But now allow me to just come to the wrap-up session. If we have done with the discussions on the land, I will start off with the...
I'm so sorry, I forgot we have one more comment here.
Okay, sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
Yes. So it was just, thank you, just to do a preamble. What Sissoko and I think the president from Zimbabwe has indicated have touched exactly what needs to happen at country level. I just wanted to inform colleagues and ambassadors of Fiji that through the Committee for Food and Security, which is a global forum, it realized exactly the intricacies about land and land access, but within the context of policies, reforms at national level. And so there was a long-term process, and I think Mr. Sissoko, vous êtes présent, when this was being negotiated, and this is about voluntary guidelines of responsible governance and tenure of land, fisheries, and forestry. And so all the 193 countries were involved, including all the civil societies at the country level, farmers' organizations, private sector. And this actually came forth and provided guidelines, and principles on how countries can be assisted to undertake whether it is reform, but taking into account that there has to be a balance of increasing productivity, investment, but however ensuring that livelihoods are undertaken, and that is taking into account the issues of communal land. The African Union, through its land policy reform initiative, was very active because of these contradictory factors, including what Zimbabwe and Mr. Sissoko have indicated. Why I wanted to bring this as a preamble is to inform you that Fiji, go through the reforms and try to look through a right model, because then the process is now under implementation with other partners, and I think European Union is very keen in assisting member states to go through this process. I also want to emphasize that the issue of gender was very key, and one of the 7 principles of this process. And so FAO with partners have come up with a technical guideline on gender governing land for women and men, to make sure that the contradictory issues that Mr. Sissoko has indicated are taken into account, so that there's a process of participation. But in the end, everybody, through the ownership process and through the local institutions, actually work together to enhance towards a good governance, so that the country benefit, the communities benefit, and households benefit without contradictions. So I thought I should just add up. I'm sorry for taking up
very good.
time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, thank you. Thank you for the intervention. We discussed this earlier on the side, and I'm very keen to look at the report that was done by FAO on this. Coming now to the summing up of the discussions we have had for the presentation from the presentations by our panelists here, I'll start off just picking up the salient features of these messages that have come through, starting from Winfred. From the FAO experiences in Uganda, she mentioned about the experiences from the farmer field schools. And essentially, technology was used to increase production in terms of either through choice of improved variety or new variety, or through research program for best farm husbandry practices. But the focus was there really to use of technology through to improve production. So that was really the message in a nutshell coming from Uganda. Coming to Mary, who sort of looked at the private sector experiences in Burkina Faso and also how technology was applied. The main lesson from there was that technology was used to On the marketing side, the core kits, which has been used extensively to measure the quality of the products to empower the farmers to better negotiate. I think it's a very important observation and a practical issue of using of technology to empower the producers. I can share one experience in this regard, which is world renowned and is a world class actually, is the sugar industry in India. In India, you have a lot of small farmers, and they produce sugarcane and take the in the private mills. But when they take the sugar cane to the private mills, they go through a computerized weighing system, which weighs the tonnage. In the same time, it measures the quality of the cane in terms of its sucrose, in fiber content. So there's a big printout like this. It shows exactly all the parameters of your produce, your tonnage, your various characteristics of the cane, and based on that they are paid. So there's total transparency of the product that is taken to the mills, to the processors. I believe some of the African countries have uptaken the technology, but really, I mean, if industries are to seek a best case scenario or best best practice of use of technology for marketing, I urge you to look at the sugarcane industry marketing, technology for use of sugarcane measurement in India. We then move on to the messages from, or the key message from Vivano. The main area where technology was used in terms of training. We sort of looked at experiences as to how technology was used to build capacity and training the people involved in the agriculture sector. Lastly, the CTA experiences and intra-ACP under ACP program, again, very much similar to what was shared by earlier on, was on focus on knowledge sharing, strengthening on capacities, and determining the best practices which can be applied and adopted by the new players in the industry. The use of ITCs to target youth was also mentioned. The use of social media, which is now something that becomes a norm, to use the state-of-art technology to create awareness of products and also the processing and husbandry practices. So that, in essence, was the key messages coming out from the various speakers up front here. And also subsequently we had the floor discussion on the land, which is also a very important aspect. We had that the communal land ownership is a common practice among the ACP regions, and there are various initiatives and programs undertaken by government to harness that or to overcome that and use that for the development of agriculture. With that, this brings us to the end of our program for this session. There's a lot we have that has come out, and I'm very happy, very satisfied about the healthy discussion that we had, and I'm sure we got a lot that we can take home. With that, I'd like to bring this to a close, and I would like to invite all of us to join us in thanking our colleagues in the presentations that we have made a contribution this afternoon.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Ambassador. We have one more session coming up.